Chapter 1. Darkness, yet not emptiness. Somewhere between existence and oblivion lay the primordial void, a space of half-formed ideas and suspended potential. No time, no boundaries, only the echo of creation's promise waiting to be born. Then I came. I felt before I thought. A presence wound itself through my mind like silent roots, coiling, binding, whispering without sound. Nishak, a name etched in my consciousness before I even knew I had one. He was not a god or ruler, but something older, an echo of power that haunted the edges of reality. You are not yet real, his voice pressed against me, a force shaping my thoughts. I tried to speak, my lips formed words that vanished. I tried to move, no limbs obeyed. I was mind, a spark in the void. You are where all things begin, he murmured. I willed flesh into being. A heartbeat sounded in the silence, my heartbeat, blunt and unexpected. Skin stretched over muscle, bones knotted into shape. Air filled unseen lungs. I stood, a boy in the nascent blur of existence. All at once the physical world flickered into view. A tapestry of sensations, the faint hum of creation, colors without names bleeding around me, time draping like liquid threads, stretching and coiling. Primordial elements drifted, half-shaped landscapes hovering in the black expanse, concepts yet unnamed. Do you feel it now? Nishak's whisper curled around my mind. The cost of being, I breathed. The void quivered, recoiled, straining against my new life. My skin prickled, my bones ached under a weight I had no name for. You are an anomaly, he said. A paradox that should not exist. I stumbled, unsteady in form. The void sought to reclaim me, shapes unraveled, colors bled away. You do not belong, Nishak intoned. And yet, you have arrived. I clenched my senses, anchoring myself to the fragile flesh I'd formed. The primordial void shuddered. I will stay, I vowed. Reality cracked like thin ice. Concepts snapped back into place. The void's pull loosened. A million possible worlds shimmered past my mind, visions of power, of conquest, of a throne built from nothingness. And at the center one figure shone, me. I tumbled through that veiled threshold, through drifting threads of time and space, until the physical world solidified around me. Cold concrete pressed against my cheek, faint electric lights buzzed overhead, the distant rush of voices, engines, life. I opened my eyes, a city waited. And Nishak's final whisper settled in my bones. Now, your story truly begins. Chapter 2. I gasped, for the first time not from need, but from the sheer weight of existence. Flesh, bone, gravity, time, all pressing in like a suffocating embrace. The physical world had settled around me, neon rain slicking cracked pavement, the drone of distant engines, voices drifting through wet alleys. Smoke and rust and something sharp curled in my lungs, familiar, yet alien. I pushed myself up. The city didn't stutter, no alarms blared, no crowds paused. It swallowed me whole. They whisper of a ghost in the gutters, a voice echoed in my mind. Nishak's, amused and patient. Listen to the underworld's song. I tuned into the static of scattered intelligence, graffiti tags that mapped gang territories, runners whispered warnings of new turf wars, jaded informants trading encrypted chatter in backroom dives. The city was alive with movement, and with fear of the unseen force now pulling its strings. I inhaled rain-laden air, boots splashing against the pavement. For a moment, I was just a boy named Owen, stranded in a world too big for him. Then Nishak coiled through my thoughts. You feel the weight of rule, the chains you wear that bind this world. What will you break first? I clenched my jaw. I'll break its rules, I replied, voice firm in the downpour. Days passed as I studied the market district's ebb and flow, learning patterns, sensing unseen currents of power beneath the neon glow. Hunger clawed at my insides, but I ignored it. Discovery was sharper than any ache. I spotted my chance, a distracted businessman, suit pressed, tie slightly loose, clutching a leather briefcase like it held his very soul. He ducked into a narrow alley, eager for privacy. The perfect target, Nishak whispered, and I moved. Not running, not sprinting. I stepped forward, and the world slipped beneath my feet. Time dragged, then snapped. In an instant, I was beside him. He froze, jaw dropping. What? He choked. I reached out, calm as dawn. No sprint, no struggle, just a quiet will that bent reality itself. His grip loosened on the briefcase. It clattered to the ground. His eyes widened, sweat beaded on his brow. Your case, I said, voice low and steady. He obeyed, dropping it. His entire body trembled, as if he'd glimpsed a god. I straightened, tucking the briefcase under my arm. The world snapped back into its normal rhythm. He staggered backward, staring in horror. Who are you? He whispered. I didn't answer, didn't need to. He'd remember the fear, he'd never explain it, and I would never see him again. Rain sluiced past in rivulets. I melted back into the crowd, the weight of power humming beneath my skin. I was still Owen, still human, but I had tasted control. Good, Nishak purred. Now you know how to bend it. I paused under a flickering street lamp and let the moment settle, then whispered back into the darkness of my mind. I'm learning fast, Nishak. Faster than you know. Chapter 3. I crouched in the shadows of a crumbling alleyway, back pressed against cold concrete. The stolen briefcase sat heavy beside me, my first tangible claim on this world. Rain drummed a restless rhythm on the pavement, neon signs reflecting in puddles like fractured dreams. In the distance, bass thumped from a club, mingling with the hiss of steam vents. I let my senses drink it in, the gritty scent of oil and wet asphalt, the sharp tang of electricity in the air, the undercurrent of a city that never sleeps. This place is alive, I thought. Every heartbeat pulses with secrets. I forced myself to rise and move toward the club's unmarked door, each step silent on slick stone. No guards challenged me yet. Word of the phantom in the gutters had spread, but real fear only forms when you prove it. Ahead, two hulking figures leaned against the walls, their mirrored shades gleaming beneath dripping neon. I passed them without a glance. Their eyes flicked to the briefcase, then returned to the street. Inside, the bass would drop, the boss would laugh, and then I'd take his crown. I slipped through a side entrance into a narrow preparation corridor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the smell of sweat grew stronger. A wordless oath formed in my mind. Tonight, I would show this city what it meant to bow. A footstep behind me, swift, calculated. One of the boss's men, blade drawn before he even cleared the threshold. His leather-gloved hand cut through the air. He was no random thug. His tailored coat and silver-gripped knife marked him as enforcer, first line of defense. He lunged. Watch and learn, Nijak urged. I didn't dodge. I didn't even grimace. My perception detached, unfolding outward like ripples on a mirror. I traced the arc of his arm, the flex of his fingers, the precise moment the blade would find flesh. With a single thought, I rewrote the strike. Time rewound, then snapped forward, and his wrist bent at a grotesque angle before he even realized the attack had failed. The knife dropped. He crumpled against the dank wall, eyes wide, the blade clattering in the puddle at his feet. I knelt, lifting the knife by the hilt. No blood, no pain, just the echo of inevitability. I slid it into my coat and rose. He watched me, terror flickering in his gaze. I offered him one word. You belong to me now. His knees buckled and he slumped away, forgotten already. I emerged into the club proper. The room was a cavern of bodies and light, strobe flashes painting silhouettes in electric blue and hot pink. The music still thrummed, faster now, as if sensing its master had arrived. I paused at the threshold, letting the scene wash over me, dancers grinding in the haze, cocktails arcing through the air, neon murals pulsing with every beat. My heart thundered in my ears, not from fear, but from the intoxicating pull of power. They think this is chaos, I thought, but I am its conductor. At the center, elevated on a raised dais, sat the boss, silk suit, gold cufflinks, a smirk that spoke of every vice he'd ever indulged. He raised a glass, amber liquid catching the light, and called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the ghost of the alleys. They say you slip through walls, steal breaths, bend minds." He laughed, low and cruel. "But can you handle power when it's all in their hands?" He flicked a diamond-faced watch. "You in that trench coat, show me something real, or get lost before I decide what to do with your body." The crowd snickered. Music rose. I stepped forward. The beat dropped to a single bass note and froze. Dancers hung mid-air. Glasses hovered in outstretched hands. The strobe lights locked on a final pulse. The entire club held its breath. I walked through the suspended moment, each footfall rewriting the rhythm of time. The enforcer lay inert behind me, forgotten by the world. I climbed the steps to the dais, gaze fixed on the boss. He rose, sudden vertigo twisting his expression. "Impressive trick," he spat, "but you're nothing but smoke and mirrors." I smiled, leaning close so only he could hear. The world remained frozen around us. "You own the illusion," I said. "But I own reality." I placed my hand on his shoulder. He stiffened, skin prickling under my touch as if reality itself recoiled. I whispered, "You built your empire on rules you thought could never change." Then I let go, and released time. The music crashed back in, bodies jerked upright. Glasses shattered in mid-sip, a scream cut through the chaos. The boss stared at me, eyes glazed with something between awe and terror. He staggered back, tripping over his own feet as his world snapped into truth. "Who? What are you?" he croaked, voice raw. I stepped off the dais, briefcase in hand. The crowd parted around me like water. Neon light flickered in my wake. "I'm the future," I said. He sank to his knees as the enforcer behind me crumpled silently. The club resumed its frantic pulse, but his reign was over. I vanished into the night, rain-slicked streets swallowing my silhouette. "Well done, my chosen," Nijak's praise echoed in my mind. "The neon throne is yours." Chapter 4. 3 months since I first took flesh, I stood atop a derelict rooftop, the city's pulse a lattice of lights and shadows beneath me. Since seizing the neon throne nearly 90 days ago, I had erased every underlord, rewritten every crime boss, yet the physical world had never shuddered so fully under my will. A soft footstep broke the hum of distant traffic. I turned to see Schofield emerge from the gloom, his posture rigid, eyes already scanning. "Schofield," I said, naming him before he spoke. He inclined his head once, flattened the club king without lifting a finger. He replied, "I'm here to ask how, and to offer something better." He was ex-military, ex-intelligence, a man who saw the city as data streams and camera grids. His voice carried the weight of strategy. "I need someone who knows how to hold power, not just seize it," I said. He allowed himself a small smile. "Then you've come to the right ghost." Together we traced the veins of the city on his wrist display, neon arteries, rain-slicked alleys, and Blackwell's surveillance empire, 10,000 cameras, audio nodes in storm drains, AI that predicted movement before it happened. "Built tighter than any fortress," Schofield muttered. "But every system has its blind spots, service entrances, maintenance ducts, every tower has a back door." I flexed my fingers as Nijak's pulse thrummed in my mind. "He thrives on your conquest," the whisper crooned, each heartbeat a feast. "Then we ghost through," I said. "So, the system thinks we're a glitch." We moved at dusk, slipping into the shadow of Council Tower East, a mirrored spire that housed Thomas Greaves' private residence on the 52nd floor. Schofield disabled the external sensors in 5 seconds flat, a silent pulse of electromagnetic interference that turned CCTV into frozen frames. Inside the service elevator, Schofield's calm instructions whispered through my mind. "Stay still when the door opens. Follow my lead. Watch for patrol bots." His hand rested lightly on the panel, eyes alert. The door slid open onto a carpeted corridor lit by recessed amber LEDs. Polished bronze plaques bore names of council members. We paused outside Greaves' door, a brushed steel slab with a biometric lock. Schofield placed his palm against the scanner. A heartbeat passed, then a soft click. The door swung inward. Greaves' office was glass-walled, overlooking the city like a panopticon. Rich walnut floors gleamed beneath a crystal chandelier. Shelves of leather-bound records stood against one wall, on the other, a floor-to-ceiling aquarium teeming with exotic fish. A rare bonsai tree curled on a side table, its gnarled branches illuminated by a single spotlight. Family portraits in silver frames showed a smiling man flanked by wife and child, memories I intended to rewrite. Greaves himself was at his desk, an imposing slab of black marble, rubbing sleep from his eyes, as hollow screens scrolled through morning briefings. One screen stuttered, corrected itself, and switched back again. I smiled at that. He looked up, surprise flooding his features. "Who?" I stepped into the lamplight. "Thomas Greaves," I said, voice calm. "You've been loyal to me for years." He rose, heart hammering. "Loyal? I don't even know you." I traced my fingers along the edge of his desk. "Every policy you've signed, every infrastructure contract you've championed, you've served my will. You've always served." His eyes darted to the aquarium, where fish paused mid-swim, a subtle echo of the reality shifting behind me. "No." His voice cracked. He backed toward the glass, knuckles whitening on the frame. "That's impossible." I watched the hollow screens glitch, city maps redrew themselves, council minutes rewrote in mid-scroll. The room's light dimmed, as if power itself bent to my whim. "You built your career on stability," I said softly. "Stability is just another illusion." Greaves sank to his knees. I reached out, pressing 2 fingers to his temple. A ripple of silent energy passed through him, memories unraveling and rewiring like corrupted code. He slumped unconscious, allegiance recoded. Schofield joined me at the window. Below, neon veins pulsed uneasily, as if the city itself sensed a new heartbeat at its core. "You've grown strong," he said, voice low. "But systems adapt. Remember that headlines will flip back, rumors will surface." I stared into the night, emptiness pooling in my chest. Each victory hollowed me further. Power was intoxicating, but it carried a cost. "You are the Nexus," Nizak whispered. "But even a Nexus can fracture." I clenched my jaw. "Then I'll rewrite the fracture itself," I murmured, watching the city learn its new shape. Together, we melted into the darkness, 2 architects sculpting a world that could never be the same. Chapter 5. 4 weeks since rewriting the city's underworld, and my eyes are looking up. Rain spattered the mirrored facade of Blackwell Tower as Schofield and I pressed ourselves against the service door, the hiss of condensation masking our approach. Neon reflections danced on our coats. Below, traffic pulsed, oblivious, every light, every horn, unaware it was in my grip. Schofield's breath was steady. "Biometric lock," he whispered, fingers ghost-touching the panel. After a heartbeat, a soft click, the door swung inward. We entered a narrow maintenance corridor, sterile and silent. My skin prickled as I surveyed every detail, vent shafts overhead, faint hums of machinery, the pale glow of emergency lights. Schofield paused at a junction. "Sub-basement feeds loop here. Give me 10 seconds." He swept a small device over a conduit. The lights dimmed, monitors 2 corridors down fizzled, and a distant alarm sputtered into silence. I felt Nijak's approval coil through my thoughts like smoke. "Now," he urged. We moved. Each step was calculated. Past locked panels we overrode with deft taps, past silent turrets that tracked phantom heat signatures. Every guard shift had been memorized by Schofield's network. No surprises, only the quiet hum of inevitability. On the 20th floor, we slipped into the security hub, a low-lit chamber thick with screens. Schofield raised his hand. A single gesture froze every monitor on a looped corridor feed. Communications crackled out. The dozen operators never knew they were gone until we were gone. A slow exhale. We continued upward. The hallway beyond stretched impossibly long, the carpeting muted underfoot. Each door we passed held hidden eyes. Each step we took deepened the silence, amplifying the tension until my own heartbeat thundered in my ears. I cast a glance at Schofield, his jaw clenched, eyes forward. We were phantoms. The boardroom doors loomed at the end of the hall, heavy walnut, the Blackwell crest embossed in silver. Schofield palmed the scanner. It clicked. We entered together. Roland Blackwell stood at the head of a massive glass table, flanked by his board. Their confident postures froze as if struck. Neon light filtered through blinds, slicing the room into stripes of shadow and glare. Blackwell straightened his tie, voice brittle. Security breach? Who the hell are you? I stepped fully into the lamplight, warm air tinged with a scent of expensive leather and panic. I am your new order, I said, letting the words hang like a blade. He laughed, a brittle sound. You? A ghost in my fortress? You're nothing. Silence pressed in. Then I raised my hand. Every screen around us rippled as if underwater, lights flickered. Their reflections moved off sync. The board members shifted uneasily, eyes darting to one another. Blackwell reached for a panic button. My fingers brushed the table's surface. Reality folded. His hand jerked as if shocked. The panic button snapped back. He staggered, breath hitching. What did you do? I crossed to him, standing just beyond his reach. I rewrote the rules, I said softly. Your memory of power is a lie. A hiss of static filled the air. The board members crumpled, clutching their heads as their minds buckled under the unseen force. One by one they sank to their knees, then collapsed fully to the floor. Blackwell's eyes welled with helpless fury. I pressed 2 fingers to his temple. The room went unnaturally still. No breaths, no heartbeats, just the quiet hum of authority shifting. Slowly, he slumped into the high-backed chair at the head of the table, my new throne. The others lay unconscious around us, subjects of my will. I settled into the seat, feeling the smooth leather beneath me, the subtle tilting mechanism adjusting to my weight. From this vantage, I surveyed the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, a living grid, now truly mine. Schofield stepped forward, kneeling beside the desk. It's done, he said softly. I leaned back, letting power settle in my bones. The city's heartbeat slowed to match mine. You have crowned yourself, Nizak whispered, distant and satisfied. I traced the edge of the desk with my fingertips. Then let them whisper, I replied, voice low. They'll learn to honor their king. Outside, Blackwell Tower pulsed with new life, its ruler reborn. And the city, at last, knew who truly sat atop the throne. Chapter 6. Nick stood alone in the penthouse of Blackwell Tower. The skyline was his now. Every shimmering glass spire, every flickering neon pulse. The city had bowed. The men who once ruled it were either forgotten or broken beneath his will. And yet, there was no thrill in it, no victory high, just silence. A kind of stillness that came not from peace but from conquest so complete it left nothing untouched. He looked out over his dominion, fingers tightening around the glass in his hand. This was supposed to feel like something. The room around him still held the scent of Blackwell's cologne, the ghost of his arrogance lingering in the air. The man had gone down choking on his own certainty, and yet even that memory was already fading. The power Nix now held should have been intoxicating. Instead, it felt empty. A soft knock broke the silence. He didn't answer, just turned slightly as the door creaked open. A man stepped inside, thin, pale, wearing a disheveled politician's suit. Nix recognized him immediately, Councilman Joran Cray. He had already rewritten this man, bent his timeline, smoothed out his memories, buried him so deep in the new narrative that he shouldn't even know who Nix was anymore. And yet, Joran's eyes locked onto him with haunted recognition. You, the man breathed, voice trembling. Nix didn't move. You shouldn't be here. I know, Joran said, shaking. I remember being somewhere else, a place that doesn't exist anymore. I remember your voice, pulling at everything I was. He stumbled forward, clutching at his temple. You changed me. You turned my name inside out. You made me love you. You made me worship you. And then I woke up. Something about his presence felt wrong, like watching a puppet remember the strings. Nix narrowed his eyes. How did you find this place? Joran gave a jagged laugh. I didn't. I was here. I've always been here. Somewhere under the surface. He looked up, eyes bloodshot and wild. I don't know what's real anymore. But I know you're real. I know you broke something in me. Nix didn't speak for a long time. This shouldn't be happening. This was impossible. Rewrites didn't unravel like this. Not without interference. Not unless... He slipped the leash, Nizak whispered inside his skull. Your grip is slipping, my chosen. You've touched the heart of reality too many times. Now it remembers being different. Shut up, Nix muttered. Joran didn't flinch. Is that who you're talking to? The voice in your head? You're not real anymore, Nix said coldly. I know, Joran whispered. That's the worst part. He took one more step forward and then collapsed, body twitching, breath ragged. Blood trickled from his nose. His eyes lost focus. Reality caught up. The rewrite reasserted itself, devouring the remnants of the man he used to be. Nix stood still, watching it happen. Nothing about it felt satisfying. It felt like something had cracked open, like the world had remembered him too well. He looked back toward the city, still lit with synthetic glory. His grip on the skyline felt a little less steady now. "Rewrite reality itself," Nijak hissed. "Don't just bend it, break it, force the truth to forget you ever existed. Otherwise, it will come for you." Nix didn't respond. He just stared into the glass. And for the first time since the fall of Blackwell, he wondered what he had started. Absolutely. Here's Chapter 7. The flicker revised to include Nix and Schofield discovering the live feed together while scouting potential business zones. Schofield offering commentary and suspicion. Edgar Holloway glitching into view. The brief but terrifying void encounter, and Nix resolving by the end to create enforcers to maintain his rule as reality starts pushing back. Chapter 7. "You want to turn this dump into a trading hub?" Schofield muttered, ducking beneath a dangling power line. "I get reclaiming sectors, but this place smells like someone buried a slaughterhouse." I didn't answer right away. I was too busy watching the skyline shift around us. 3 days had passed since I claimed Blackwell's throne. 3 days since the board had fallen to their knees. The city now bent with less resistance, most of it. But control wasn't the same as stability. We were scouting, quietly, no grand entourage, just me and Schofield reviewing the outlying districts, places I'd once overlooked, searching for footholds to expand commerce, influence, visibility. My name echoed through the city like gospel, but there were still places that didn't feel mine. We stepped into a half-collapsed watch station near the Junction district, a building that had once served Blackwell's private security. It was abandoned now, glass cracked, terminals blinking weakly in the gloom. Still getting power, Schofield noted, brushing dust off a console. Could patch into old feeds, see what this place is looking at. I gave a nod. Moments later, the room hummed to life. Screens flickered, grainy feeds from 100 old cameras across the district. Most showed static, collapse, or silence. And then one of them twitched. "Back it up," I said, stepping closer. Schofield scrubbed the feed. There, under the faint buzz of a flickering streetlight, stood a man, wearing a coat scorched at the hem, standing perfectly still. Edgar Holloway, a name buried months ago. Schofield whistled low. "No way. He's gone, Nix. You cooked his entire identity. He doesn't even exist in system memory anymore." "I didn't just cook him," I said coldly. "I unmade him. Yet here he was, flickering, phasing, like something not fully real, or something trying desperately to become real again." I watched the feed in silence, brows tight, thoughts grinding. Schofield glanced at me. "Want me to send a cleanup crew?" "No," I said. "We go ourselves." We arrived within the hour. I warped the world around us, bending roads and air currents to reach the junction faster. Still, the district resisted, like it remembered what it used to be and refused to forget. The air was cold, wet concrete, mildew, stagnation, and standing exactly where he'd been on the feed. Edgar. He didn't move, didn't blink. Schofield raised his sidearm, but I waved him down. "No," I muttered. "Let me." My hand lifted, instinct and power laced together. I reached for Edgar, grasped the tether of his reality, and the world collapsed. No light, no sound, no time, just cold. A sharp, infinite stillness that wrapped around me like a coffin. My form unraveled, my consciousness flickered, and in the void, something else was there. Watching, it didn't speak, it didn't move. But I could feel its awareness, a presence that regarded me like a failed equation. It wasn't Nijak, it was something older. Alien, patient. I couldn't scream, couldn't resist. I could only endure as the thing observed me, until it released me. I slammed back into my body. Concrete met my knees. My chest heaved. The street was empty. Edgar Holloway was gone. Schofield crouched beside me, weapon still drawn. You blacked out. 1 second you touched him, next you hit the floor like a sack of bricks. I didn't respond immediately. There was still frost on my breath. There had been something out there, something real, and I could feel it now, my grip slipping. The cracks weren't just forming, they were spreading. "Someone, or something, is pulling pieces of the world out from under me," I muttered. Schofield narrowed his eyes. "So, what do we do?" I rose slowly, brushing dirt from my coat, eyes narrowing at the pulsing street lamp where Edgar once stood. "We prepare," I said. "Prepare for what?" I turned to him. "For resistance," I said. "And failure." Schofield blinked. "I can't keep this city in line by force alone," I continued, thinking aloud now, letting the idea take shape. "If reality pushes back, I need something grounded, physical, loyal." "You're talking enforcers?" he said slowly. "Yes. They won't be enough to fix what's breaking." "No," I agreed. "But they'll hold the shape while I figure out how deep this fracture goes." Schofield exhaled. "You're actually worried?" I looked past him, toward the skyline. "No," I said. "I'm preparing." And somewhere deep in my mind, Nijak chuckled. "So the god builds himself an army. Oh, how gloriously mortal of you." I didn't respond. Because for the first time since I took the throne, I wasn't sure I was alone at the top anymore. And that meant one thing. My rule had just begun, and so had the war to keep it. Chapter 8. Nick's POV. The city didn't sleep anymore, not because it was awake, but because it was broken. Dreams had no hold in a world constantly rewritten. And I was the one doing the rewriting. From the top of Blackwell Tower, I watched its veins twitch, neon pulses over steel bones. Every block, every alley, whispered my name in fragmented tones, some fearful, some reverent, some hollow. I hated the reverent ones most. I hadn't set out to be a god. Gods were worshipped. Worship slowed people. Worship bred myths and excuses. No, I wanted obedience. Clean, immediate, absolute. But now, even that was slipping. Nijak's presence inside me, a voice, a shadow, a weight, had once been my edge. Now it pressed heavier, whispered more urgently. The cracks grow. They will come for you, my chosen. Before the void does. He wasn't wrong. The incident with Holloway had shaken something loose. I hadn't told Schofield what I saw, not fully. He already looked at me like I was the last match in a room full of gas leaks. I didn't need him watching for the spark, but I knew this couldn't be handled alone. So I changed the city again. We started by dragging out the hidden ones, the forgotten, the damaged, people too broken to be fully rewritten but too lost to return to the old world. The city had buried them in transit ruins, under half-collapsed shelters, in rusted underground stations. The kind of people no one looked for. Now I needed them. Not out of mercy, out of necessity. These people are unstable, Schofield muttered, scanning biometric files in the old Blackwell war room. Schizoids, synthetics with fried neural bands, post-reality drifters. Exactly, I said. He stared at me. That's not an argument for using them. They're blank pages with teeth, I replied, which means we can write anything we want. Schofield looked like he wanted to argue but didn't. He'd learned by now when to push and when to listen. The testing ground was an old transit station near the city's southern crater. It had once been a hub of movement, a pulse point. Now, it was just bones and silence. I waited there, alone, as the first candidate was brought in, dragged by two operatives who barely kept him restrained. Taller than me, bare-chested, shivering, eyes blackened with chemical burns. Every few seconds he muttered strings of nonsense, some words real, some overwritten echoes. The man dropped to his knees. He stared at me, and then laughed. Are you the one who rewrote my children into gravel? I didn't flinch. Stand up, you stole my dreams, wrapped them in wire. Now I cough static when I sleep. I said, stand up. He lunged. I didn't move. He froze mid-air, held inches from my face by my mind's grip. His body twitched, blood vessels bulging as the tension in my power squeezed around his limbs. And still, his smile never faded. You're broken too, he rasped. I see it. In your teeth. You eat meaning and spit out names. I stared into his eyes, watching something. Fracture. Then I let him go. He hit the floor like a dropped marionette, gasping. And slowly, he began to laugh again, quieter, controlled. The test had worked. Later, I sat alone in the half-lit corridor outside the testing vault. Schofield joined me, a cigarette half-lit between his fingers. Well, he said, you found your mad dog. I don't want a dog, I murmured. I want a firewall. Schofield raised an eyebrow. One that bites back. I nodded. Exactly, he took a drag. What happens when it bites you? I didn't answer, because I already knew. I'd bite harder. Chapter 9. Nick's POV. It was supposed to be simple. Power is supposed to cascade downward. You light the torch at the top, and the flame trickles to the base. But this city smothered flame. Even now, with Blackwell broken and the board silenced, the city didn't submit. It bent, but it didn't break. We ran the first phase of the Enforcer initiative out of a converted underground hub, one of Blackwell's old off-grid facilities hidden beneath the administrative sector. A dozen new candidates, half of them twitching, all of them dangerous, each implanted with a failsafe, a neural mindlock keyed to my frequency. If any of them turned, I could shut their brains off like flicking a switch. Schofield didn't like it. Feels like playing with cursed toys, he muttered, as we watched one of the test subjects slam his head into reinforced glass, laughing. This isn't control. This is postponing failure. I leaned forward, studying the footage. They don't need to last forever. Just long enough. Schofield's fingers tapped against the terminal. You keep acting like you've got time, like the walls aren't already twitching. They were. I could feel it. That's when we found it. It started as a faint flicker, interference running parallel to our internal feeds. Something riding the echoes of the old Blackwell surveillance system. Schofield pulled it up on a black-screen terminal. Something ancient and barely functional. The signal shouldn't have been active. It was buried deep in abandoned servers, outside of anything I had rewritten. He looked at me. I think someone's watching us. I stared at the static dancing across the monitor. It wasn't surveillance. It was a pulse, rhythmic, patterned, like something buried was trying to remember. Schofield began isolating pieces of it, audio fragments, corrupted timestamps. There were hundreds, and then one of them played, a voice, a whisper. Nix. I froze. The voice wasn't just familiar. It was a man I had erased weeks ago. Thomas Val. I turned sharply, eyes narrowing. Where did that clip come from? Schofield didn't speak at first, just replayed the fragment. Nix, you were supposed to be one of us. I stepped away from the console, mind surging. I burned him. I unmade him. Schofield looked pale. Then how the hell is he talking? Because you didn't unmake him. Not fully. You can't erase what you don't understand. Nijak's voice curled inside my thoughts like barbed smoke. I retreated to the rooftop of Blackwell Tower, the only place that didn't hum with false clarity. Wind tore at the edges of my coat. Below, my city pulsed. Glitched, laughed in silence. It had stopped obeying. Or worse, it had started remembering. I closed my eyes. "Tell me what this is," I murmured to Nijak. "A ripple," he whispered. "A fracture in the skin of your dominion. Someone else is cutting the same cloth." I clenched my fists. If someone was dragging ghosts from my past, I needed more than firewalls and flesh-bound soldiers. I needed vision. Back in the command chamber, I called Schofield to my side. Double the enforcer expansion. Quietly. Focus on city sectors with high static flow. "You're building a net," he said, reading between the lines. "No," I said. "I'm building a trap." Schofield said nothing, but he didn't look away. Chapter 10, Cracks in the Throne. Nick's POV. Power wasn't just something I held. It was what I had become. I wasn't merely a ruler. I was the axis the entire city spun on. I had bent reality to my will, erased those who dared oppose me, rewritten history itself, and carved my name deep into the bones of existence. For weeks, I'd stood untouchable at the peak, the unseen king of all I surveyed. But now, something was wrong. I sat alone in the penthouse, the city sprawling beneath me like a living circuit board pulsing with neon veins. The skyline shimmered, part glowing, part glitching, like a hologram with fractured code. The streets below were mine, every building, every mind, every whispered thought. And yet, in the last few days, the cracks had started to bleed through. At first it was subtle, flickers, small lapses in the control matrix I'd stitched tight. People I erased showed ghosts of memory, as if they were coming back from a fading dream. Events I rewrote blurred at the edges, slipping back to some older version of truth. Buildings I thought wiped from existence lingered in half-formed outlines on my mind's eye, stubborn echoes in the city's fabric. Reality was fighting back. I tried to ignore it, deny it, but then it happened again. Schofield entered silently, eyes sharp, scanning the holographic monitors as they flickered. I raised my hand, freezing the images. There, unmistakable, walking unbothered in the middle of the city, was a ghost from my past. Thomas Val. I hadn't just killed Thomas. I had annihilated him from every record, every memory, every thread of time. His existence was supposed to be a dead end, and yet here he was, like a virus rewriting my code. Schofield muttered, voice low and tense. "This makes no sense." I said nothing. My fingers curled tight around the armrest, my mind a storm of disbelief and fury. I stood and moved toward the balcony, staring down at the city that was both mine, and yet slipping from my grasp. I reached out with everything I was, my will, my power, and erased him. Again, the world froze. A deep, unnatural groan echoed, not from outside, but from the core of existence itself. A warning, something primal resisting the command of a god. Thomas flickered, half there, half not, caught between oblivion and defiance. Then, impossibly, he stabilized. I staggered back. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." Schofield's voice cut sharply through the silence. "Nix, what just happened?" I clenched my fists until my knuckles burned. It didn't work. For the first time, doubt flickered behind Schofield's eyes, the faintest crack in the veneer of control we both clung to. Something deeper was stirring. Not a rebellion, not a faction of resistance, but a force beyond comprehension, moving through the seams of my reality. A ripple in the foundation of my throne. I turned back to the city below. Find out who's behind this, what's unraveling my empire. Schofield nodded, already moving, and then Nijak's voice slithered into my mind, amused and cold. "Ah, my chosen. You feel it now, don't you? You are no longer alone in this game." I didn't reply, because I already knew what he would say. I exhaled, eyes burning with a new fire. The city was no longer just mine, it was a battlefield. Let them try. Chapter 11, Reeves Pov. The world had forgotten the truth. Nix had seen to that. He had rewritten history, erased people, bent reality to his will, until there was no one left who even remembered fighting back. Except for us. We were the last free minds. And I was their leader. The hideout was buried beneath the city, deep below the subways and forgotten tunnels, a place even Nix's rewritten reality couldn't reach. It wasn't just a bunker. It was a sanctuary. A place where the real world still existed. Where people remembered. And tonight, I was going to show them how to take it back. I stood at the front of the chamber, dozens of faces staring back at me. Soldiers, engineers, hackers, defectors, people who had either escaped Nix's rewriting or had broken free on their own. Each of them had a reason to be here. Each of them had lost everything to the god who had once been a man. I took a slow breath. We don't have much time. The room fell silent. Nix thinks he's invincible. He thinks this world belongs to him. And for a long time, he was right. I stepped forward, meeting their gazes one by one. But we know something he doesn't. I raised my hand, letting a flicker of telekinetic energy ripple through the air, lifting the metal table beside me effortlessly. We know he isn't the only one who can break reality. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the table crushed in on itself, folding like paper under the weight of my mind. I let it drop. For years, I've been searching for a way to fight back. I've studied his power. I've seen how he bends the world, and I've learned how to counter it. I gestured to the holoscreen beside me, flicking it on with a thought. Blueprints flashed to life, detailed schematics, neural link designs, biomechanical enhancements. The future of warfare. These are the demigods. The room tensed. I tapped the display highlighting the enhancement process. Nix's biggest advantage is that he can rewrite reality itself, but there's one thing he can't touch. I pointed to the cybernetic neural core displayed on the screen. Machines. Murmurs spread through the group. I've designed a new breed of soldiers. Humans enhanced with synthetic minds resistant to Nix's influence. He can rewrite their past, their memories, but he can't rewrite their code. I clenched my fists. He plays God. But these are warriors who can fight him on his own level. I turned back to them, voice calm but firm, and tonight we begin building the first generation. The lab was silent except for the hum of machinery. The first test subject lay on the operating table, eyes closed, breathing steady. A volunteer. One of my best operatives, someone willing to take the risk. Because they all knew the truth. This wasn't just about fighting Nix. This was about proving he could be beaten. I placed my hands on the neural interface, feeling the raw energy pulsing through the machinery. This was beyond science. This was engineering reality. My mind reached out, intertwining with the system, guiding the process as the cybernetic framework fused with living flesh. And then, the moment of truth, the subject's eyes snapped open. But they weren't human anymore. They glowed with raw power, a new kind of being, something beyond human. The first demigod. I exhaled slowly, staring down at what we had created. How do you feel? The soldier sat up, rolling his shoulders, testing his strength. And then, he grinned, like I could rip that bastard apart with my bare hands. A slow, satisfied smirk pulled at my lips. Good, because that's exactly what he was going to do. I walked back into the main chamber, my resistance fighters waiting for the verdict. I glanced at the new demigod, standing beside me, his presence undeniable. They felt it. They knew. This is how we win, for the first time since Nix had taken this world. Hope flickered in their eyes. I stepped forward, voice unwavering. We are not gods. We are not miracles, but we are something Nix has never faced before. I turned, locking eyes with every person in the room. We are the last free minds. I let the words settle, let them sink into the hearts of those who had lost everything. And we are going to take our world back. The silence held for a moment longer. Then, the room erupted. Cheers, determination, and above it all, the knowledge that for the first time, Nix had something to fear. Chapter 12, Nix Pove. Something was moving against me. The glitches had been getting worse. My reality was no longer absolute. People I erased were reappearing. Events I rewrote were reverting. My control was slipping, but that wasn't what disturbed me the most. It was the whispers. A name, a presence, a shadow moving in the places I could not see. Reeves. I should have known. It was always going to be him. Schofield stood in front of me, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't look at me the way others did. He didn't bow, didn't flinch, didn't tremble in my presence. He was the only one left who still saw me as Owen, even if that name meant nothing now. We found something, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Or rather, someone. I didn't respond. I was already looking at the screen. There he was, Reeves, alive. Moving through my city like he had never left, like he had never been erased, never been rewritten. My fingers tightened against the chair. I tried to erase him, I murmured. And yet, he's still here. Schofield exhaled. Yeah, that's a problem. I turned away from the screen. Bring him to me. Schofield hesitated, just for a second. He knew what this meant. He knew what Reeves was. You sure? I met his gaze. Now, I was expecting a battle. I was expecting resistance, a struggle, something that would make sense. But when my soldiers found Reeves, when they surrounded him, weapons raised, he didn't fight back. He simply smiled, and then he let them take him. They brought him to me, dragging him through my throne room, throwing him to his knees before me. I watched him, expression unreadable, as he lifted his head, meeting my gaze without fear. He hadn't changed. No, that wasn't true. He looked the same, but something was different. Something was sharper, colder. His presence didn't waver like the others. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't kneeling. He was simply waiting. Reeves, I said, voice smooth, controlled. Nix, he answered, and the way he said it, like it was a joke, like he wasn't taking this seriously, sent something burning through me. I stepped forward, the weight of my power pressing down on the room, suffocating the air itself. He didn't flinch. You shouldn't be here. He smirked. And yet, here I am. I clenched my jaw. I could feel the eyes of my enforcers, of Schofield, watching, waiting. I reached out, pressing my will against him, ready to erase him from existence with a thought. Nothing happened. I pushed harder. Still nothing. The air crackled. The world twisted. Reality trembled under my command. And yet, he remained. Untouched. unchanged. I took a slow breath, stepping back, my expression unreadable. Interesting. Reeves tilted his head. Not the reaction I was expecting. No threats, no godly proclamations. I studied him. I don't need threats, I need answers. Reeves exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. Still the same, always thinking you're the one in control. I watched him carefully. You knew this would happen. You let them take you. Of course I did. He smirked again, and I realized he wasn't here to fight. He was here to show me something. I didn't like that. You're wondering how, aren't you? His voice was calm even. How I'm still here. Why I'm not bowing like the rest of them. Why I still remember everything you've done. My silence was his answer. He exhaled, stretching his fingers, testing the restraints they had placed on him as if they meant nothing. You really don't get it, do you? He murmured. I'm not like them, Owen. I barely reacted to the name, but I saw Schofield shift slightly at my side. You can rewrite the world all you want. You can erase history, rewrite time, reshape people's memories, but me? He leaned forward, his voice low, sharp. I don't exist in your reality. The weight of his words settled over the room like a storm. I watched him, my expression unreadable. He smirked, tilting his head. That's what scares you, isn't it? I exhaled, slowly stepping back. I don't fear you, Reeves. He smiled, slow and knowing. You should. The moment he said it, the air around him shifted. I felt it before I saw it. The pressure, the shift, the unnatural pull of something outside of my control. And then Reeves moved. He didn't stand. He didn't break his restraints. He didn't need to. With nothing but his mind, the steel bindings snapped apart, twisted and crushed like paper. My enforcers stepped forward, weapons raised, and then they were lifted off their feet. Without moving, without lifting a hand, Reeves sent them flying across the room, slamming into the walls with bone-shattering force. The entire room shook with the impact, furniture collapsing, windows cracking under the sheer pressure of his telekinesis. I didn't move, because for the first time in a long time, I was watching something I didn't understand. Reeves exhaled, standing to his full height, rolling his shoulders. There it is, he murmured, watching me. That look, I didn't react. You've never met something you couldn't control, he continued. Not until now. I held his gaze, voice calm. You think this changes anything? Reeves tilted his head. I think it already has. I didn't blink. Then prove it. He smiled, gladly. And then, with nothing but a flick of his wrist, the entire building shook. The lights flickered. The ground trembled beneath my feet. The air rippled with raw, uncontrollable force. Reeves grinned. You're not the only one who can break reality, Nix. I clenched my jaw. Schofield stepped forward, eyes locked on Reeves, his fingers twitching near his holster. I could feel the tension radiating off him, the silent conflict in his stance. I looked back at Reeves. This isn't over. He smirked. No, it's just beginning. He lifted his hand, and then, before my eyes, before I could react, before I could rewrite anything, he was gone, not erased, not rewritten, just gone, like reality had let him slip through its fingers. I exhaled, fingers curling into fists. Schofield was watching me carefully, but he didn't say anything. I turned back to the skyline, staring out over the city that had once felt unshakable. This wasn't just a glitch, this was a war, and for the first time since I had taken the throne, I wasn't sure if I was going to win. Chapter 13. Nix Pove. Reeves had escaped, not through trickery, not through deception. He had simply left, like the world didn't apply to him, like my laws, my rules, my control meant nothing. And that was the problem. He wasn't part of my world. I stood at the edge of my penthouse, staring down at the city, feeling it shift beneath my feet. Everything I had built, everything I had rewritten, everything I had become, all of it meant nothing if there was something I couldn't touch. Schofield stood behind me, arms crossed, watching. He hadn't spoken since Reeves vanished. He knew better. I exhaled slowly, my fingers twitching at my sides, feeling the weight of the moment press against me. You saw it, I said, my voice level. Schofield didn't answer right away. He was careful, always careful, especially now. Yeah, he finally said. I saw it. I turned to him, watching his expression. He was unreadable, but I had known him long enough to sense the hesitation beneath the surface. He's a problem, I said. Schofield exhaled, rubbing his jaw. That's one way to put it. He was waiting, calculating, testing me. I stepped forward, the air around me warping as I moved. If you have something to say it. Schofield met my gaze, his face calm, steady. You tried to erase him, and it didn't work. I didn't react. You tried to rewrite him, and it didn't work. My fingers twitched. Schofield tilted his head slightly, watching. And now, you're trying to decide whether that means he's your first real threat, or if he's something worse. I clenched my jaw. Because he was right. This wasn't just a threat. This was something else. I turned back to the skyline, the weight of the realization settling over me like a storm. Find him, Schofield exhaled through his nose. And if I do? I didn't hesitate. Then we end him. Schofield nodded once, then turned and left. I watched him go, feeling something pull at the edge of my thoughts. It was Nijak, slithering through my mind like smoke, his presence amused, pleased. This is what you needed, my chosen. I exhaled. Explain. An obstacle, a challenge, A war. Without struggle, power becomes stagnant. But now? I felt it too. The tension, the pull, the shift. For the first time since I had taken this world, something felt real again. I flexed my fingers, the air trembling at my touch. He won't win, Nishak chuckled, dark and knowing. Oh, my chosen. He doesn't need to win. He just needs to make you question if you can lose. I didn't answer. Because I already knew the truth. The war had begun, and for the first time, I wasn't the one who started it. Chapter 14, Nix Pov. The war was no longer a question. It had begun. Reeves had stopped hiding. He wasn't just fighting back, he was building something. Something engineered, something deliberate. And now, for the first time, I wasn't facing a mindless rebellion. I was facing a response. Schofield dropped the tablet onto the table in front of me. It's worse than we thought. I didn't move. I kept my gaze on the skyline, the city stretching beneath me, my city, my world. And yet, in the past few days, I had felt it slipping. It wasn't just small inconsistencies. This was something else, something organized, something designed. I reached for the tablet, flipping through the feeds, my fingers tightening with each file I opened. They weren't soldiers. They weren't resistance fighters. They weren't human anymore. There were five warriors, no more, no less. But in every image, every video, every encounter, my forces were losing. I clenched my jaw. Names. Schofield exhaled. We don't have real ones, just code names. I read the words on the screen. Ares, Ajax, Orion, Valkyrie, Helios. I understood immediately. These weren't just fighters. These were symbols. They weren't a rebellion. They were a statement. I set the tablet down. Where did they come from? Schofield didn't answer immediately. He knew what this meant. They came from Reeves. The name sat heavy in the air. I should have known. It was always going to be him. Schofield leaned forward. These aren't just enhanced soldiers. They're immune, Nix. I already knew. I'd felt it the moment I saw the footage. They don't follow the rules, Schofield continued. You erase them, they come back. You rewrite them, they resist. And they hit hard. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on the skyline, my fingers drumming against the edge of the table. Five warriors, built to counter me. Reeves wasn't trying to win a war in numbers. He was building a perfect weapon, and that meant these five. They weren't the real fight. They were a test. I exhaled, standing. Where's Reeves now? Schofield hesitated, unknown. But he's not running. He gestured to the footage. He's positioning. He's waiting for you to move. A trap. Reeves knew me too well. He knew exactly how I thought. I turned away from the screens. Deploy the enforcers. Send the reality squads. I want them contained. Schofield didn't move. I felt his hesitation before he even spoke. You sure that's the move? I turned, eyes narrowing. Say what you're thinking. Schofield exhaled. Reeves knows you'll counter this. He wouldn't send the demigods unless he had something bigger behind them. He was careful with his words. He wasn't questioning me. He was warning me. I already knew the answer. The demigods weren't the endgame. They were distractions, which meant Reeves had one more card to play. Something final. Something designed specifically for me. I clenched my fists. We deal with what's in front of us first. Schofield nodded. And after that, I turned back to the skyline, my city glowing beneath me, the weight of what was coming settling into my bones. Then we prepare for whatever Reeves is hiding, because I knew the truth. Reeves wouldn't just build warriors. He would build something worse, something unstoppable. And when that time came, when all is revealed, I would be ready. Chapter 15, Nix Pov. I had fought wars before. I had erased enemies from history, rewritten entire battles to end before they even began. I had reshaped the world to suit my vision, making my rule inevitable, absolute. But this wasn't a war of numbers. This was a war of design. Reeves had built this conflict. He had studied me, calculated my movements, engineered every piece of the resistance like a machine crafted for one singular purpose, to undo me. And now, his first pieces were making their move. Schofield stood beside me as we watched the live feed. A strike team of my enforcers had located one of the five, Orion. The demigods weren't hiding. They weren't running. They were waiting. The enforcers moved in swiftly, surrounding Orion in the back alley of an abandoned district. Standard containment, the same method we used on every other threat. They issued the order. Kneel, submit. This city belongs to Nix. Orion smiled, and then he moved. Not like a human, not like anything that had come before. One moment he was standing still, the next, 3 enforcers were dead before they hit the ground. He didn't teleport, he didn't use speed. He simply acted in ways reality hadn't predicted. The others fired. My enforcers were fast, trained, efficient. Their weapons weren't normal. They were designed to bend existence itself. But Orion didn't bend. He was already moving through their fire, weaving through bullets, grabbing one mid-air and throwing it back faster than it had been shot. It tore through an enforcer's skull. Schofield exhaled sharply. That's not normal. I didn't answer. I was watching, analyzing, seeing how Orion was defying my rewriting. He wasn't just enhanced. He was operating outside of my system. One enforcer tried to rewrite him directly. I watched as reality twisted, trying to unmake Orion, trying to force him to vanish from existence. For a moment, the air rippled around him, like he was flickering between being and nothingness. Then Orion grinned, and it stopped. The rewriting failed. He stepped forward, grabbed the enforcer by the throat, and ripped him apart with his bare hands. Schofield swore under his breath. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't a soldier. This wasn't a warrior. This was a weapon, and Reeves had built him for me. Orion turned toward the last enforcer, who was already frozen in place. Not by power. Not by ability, by fear. I watched as Orion stepped past him. He didn't even kill him. He let him live, to spread the message. The feed cut. Silence settled between me and Schofield. I exhaled slowly, turning away from the screen. Status on the others? Schofield swallowed. Reports say Ares and Valkyrie are hitting supply lines. Helios took down a syndicate leader who swore loyalty to you yesterday. Ajax just wiped out one of our drone control hubs. One demigod alone had shattered a squad of elite enforcers. 5 were burning my empire down piece by piece. And Reeves? He was waiting. Schofield shifted. Nix, we can't keep treating this like a normal rebellion. I nodded. I know. I turned to the window, watching the city lights flicker beneath me. The war had changed. Reeves had designed these warriors not just to fight, not just to win, but to test me, to push me to my limits, to make me evolve. I exhaled. Issue the next command. Schofield hesitated. Which one? I didn't blink. We stopped holding back. The demigods wanted war. Then I'd show them what a god could do. Chapter 16, Nix Pov. The demigods had made their first move. One of my squads was gone. A team of trained enforcers, erased like they were nothing. Orion hadn't just killed them. He had broken my rules. The rules I had shaped this world with. And he wasn't alone. The rest of them were moving in the shadows, hitting my strongholds, disrupting my supply chains. They weren't waging a war. They were forcing my hand. Schofield stood beside me in the command center, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the reports coming in from across the city. Every one of them said the same thing. The demigods weren't like anything we had faced before. They're not just strong, Schofield said, voice measured. They're fast, they're coordinated, and worst of all, they're learning. I didn't react. They don't just fight, he continued. They adapt. Every time we send an attack, they counter it faster than before. The enforcers can't keep up. Even the reality agents are struggling. I already knew. My forces weren't just losing. They were falling behind. Reeves wasn't just attacking. He was forcing evolution. I tapped the screen in front of me, pulling up the city map. My empire, my domain. And yet, here, in these flashing red sectors, my control was already fading. Show me the last engagement, I ordered. Schofield hesitated. Then the feed played. A raid on one of my outposts, a facility storing powerful raw material designed to fuel my next expansion. The enforcers were there before the attack began, fully armed, prepared for anything. Or so they thought. The feed flickered as Ares tore through the front lines. The biggest of them all, a brute wrapped in reinforced armor, moving like something that shouldn't be possible. He didn't just withstand damage, he absorbed it. Bullets flattened against his skin. Explosions rippled over him without leaving a scratch. Enforcers tried to rewrite him, tried to force reality itself to break him down. It didn't work. He moved forward, crushing them one by one, a walking apocalypse. The feed cut before the slaughter finished. I exhaled. Reeves did this on purpose. Schofield tilted his head. What do you mean? He sent Orion first to show us their speed. Then he sent Ares to show us their durability. I clenched my jaw. He's revealing them one by one, making us study them, making me think about them. Schofield frowned. Why? Because he's waiting for me to evolve too. Reeves wanted me to adapt, because this wasn't just a war. This was a test. I turned to Schofield. Next phase, we bring them to us. Schofield exhaled sharply. You want to force them into an engagement? No, I murmured. I want them to walk into my hands willingly. The demigods were playing their game. Now it was my turn. Chapter 17. Nix Pov. The trap was set. For too long, I had let Reeves dictate the flow of battle. His demigods struck where they pleased, tearing at the edges of my empire, forcing my enforcers to play defense. I had allowed it. I had watched, studied, learned. But now it was time to remind them who I was. They thought they were evolving. They thought they were designed to counter me. They weren't ready for what was coming. Schofield stood beside me in the control room, eyes flicking between the screens. The city grid shimmered with security feeds, tracking movement in real time. But my focus was on one specific sector, Sector 5, a critical energy hub, heavily fortified, controlled by my forces, and most importantly, a perfect lure. The demigods had attacked locations with precision, each strike exposing a weakness, a flaw in my infrastructure. But I had rewritten the rules. This wasn't a weakness. This was bait. Schofield exhaled, shaking his head. This better work. These things don't fight like anything we've faced before. I glanced at him. You sound worried. I am. He didn't look away from the screens. But I also know you don't set traps unless you're sure they'll snap shut. I smirked. Exactly. A disturbance rippled across the grid. Movement. Unnatural. Fast. They had taken it. Schofield muttered under his breath. Idiots. No, not idiots. Predictable. I stood, watching the feed as Valkyrie entered the energy hub. She moved with a grace that didn't belong in battle, weaving through the shadows, her movements too fluid, too calculated. She was precise, measured, a predator that had never known failure. She had no idea she had just walked into mine. I reached out, feeling the air shift around me. My will stretched through the city, threading through the very structure of reality itself. And then, I closed my fist. The world snapped. Valkyrie reacted instantly, sensing the change, but it was too late. The trap wasn't just physical, it wasn't just a location. It was reality itself. I had rewritten the battlefield. Schofield leaned forward, watching the screen. You just locked her inside a section of the city? No, I murmured. I locked her inside my world. She moved fast, too fast. Her reflexes defied logic, adapting to every environmental change in real time. But she wasn't adapting to me. She was adapting to the rules she thought still applied. That was her mistake. I shifted the space around her. Buildings twisted, alleys collapsed into dead ends, exits became mirages. She was moving through a maze that didn't exist until I willed it to. For the first time, she hesitated. I stepped forward, reaching further, and reality crushed down on her. The weight hit her like a force she had never experienced. I could feel her struggle, feel the way she tried to push back, to resist. But this wasn't a battle of strength. This was dominance. Her breath came sharp, ragged. She looked up at the sky, at the neon glow of a city that was no longer hers. She finally understood. She had never stepped into an energy hub. She had stepped into my mind. Schofield watched from my side as the footage flickered, the sensors struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. The room had gone silent, the other enforcers unwilling to speak as the feed glitched in and out. It wasn't their systems failing. It was reality struggling to keep up. Valkyrie was fast, intelligent, highly trained, but she had never faced something that didn't follow the rules. And that was the problem with Reeves and his demigods. They thought this was a game of strategy. They thought this was a contest of abilities. They didn't realize that there was no battle if I decided there wasn't one. Schofield muttered, I think she's starting to panic. I nodded. They weren't built to handle something they can't control. Valkyrie vanished from the cameras for a split second, her speed overwhelming even the tracking systems. Then she reappeared, but not where she was supposed to. She was exactly where I wanted her. The feed flickered again. She was on her knees. The walls around her had collapsed into nothingness, leaving her in a space that no longer existed in physical form. Schofield let out a low breath. You boxed her into a void. I nodded. She's seeing it now. The first demigod had fallen, and Reeves was watching. I turned, walking away from the screen. Take her alive. Schofield raised an eyebrow. You want her intact? I exhaled. I want Reeves to know that his designs aren't perfect. Schofield smirked. That'll piss him off. I smiled. Good, because this wasn't just a victory. This was a message. Reeves thought he was shaping evolution. He thought he was pushing me into something greater. But what he didn't realize, I wasn't adapting. I was reminding them why I was inevitable. Chapter 18, Reeves Pove. Well, that didn't go as planned. I leaned back in my chair, boots kicked up on the table, arms folded behind my head as I watched the screen flicker with the latest disaster. Valkyrie was down. Captured, trapped inside whatever hellscape Nix had decided reality was today. One of my best, one of my fastest, one of the 5 I had specifically designed to counter him, and she had walked straight into a black hole of his making. Damn. Okay, I said, nodding to myself. So that was bad. Ares cracked his knuckles beside me, looking about 5 seconds away from flipping the table. We're going after her, Ajax muttered. Yeah, because charging into a god's hands worked out so well for her the first time. Helios rubbed his temples. We underestimated how much he could manipulate space itself. He didn't just trap her. He rewrote her battlefield mid-fight. I took a slow breath, tapping my fingers against my arm. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Orion exhaled, arms crossed. We should be executing Phase 2 by now. Instead, we're sitting here watching our best infiltrator get folded like a lawn chair. I tilted my head. Technically, we don't know how badly she got folded. Maybe she's fine. Maybe she's getting a nice cup of tea and a friendly chat. Ares glared at me. Reeves, yeah? Not the time. Right. Serious faces. Got it. I swung my legs off the table, sitting up properly. Look, we all knew this was going to happen eventually. We poked the beast long enough, and it was bound to bite back. Helios frowned. I just didn't think he'd evolve this fast. I sighed. Yeah. That's the fun part, isn't it? Nix had adjusted quicker than expected. He wasn't just rewriting the people in this city anymore. He was rewriting the way they interacted with reality itself. And that meant one thing. The timeline was shrinking. This was always meant to be a process. The demigods weren't built to win immediately. They were built to test him, push him, force him into a position where I could land the final move. But now he was getting there on his own. And that was a problem. Ares clenched his fists. We need to get her out. Yep, now. Yep. He waited. I smiled. You're expecting me to have a plan, aren't you? Ajax groaned. Please, for the love of everything, tell us you actually have one. I stretched, letting out a slow breath. Of course I do. I always do. I'm very smart, you see. Reeves, okay, fine. Here's what we do. I flicked my fingers toward the screen. We don't go after her. Silence. Ares glared at me. The fuck do you mean we don't go after her? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Nix just flexed. Hard. He caught one of us without breaking a sweat. Now you think he's just going to leave her sitting there, waiting for us to break in and save the day? No one spoke. Exactly, I continued. He wants us to react. He wants us to be emotional. He wants us to panic. I smirked. But we're not going to do that, are we? Helios frowned. Then what's the move? We do the opposite of what he expects, I said simply. Instead of LA saving Valkyrie immediately, we hit him somewhere else. Hard. Ajax rubbed his chin. Diversion, not just a diversion, a counterpunch. I grinned. He's waiting for us to walk into his trap, so instead we're going to kick him in the teeth. Ares crossed his arms. Where? Somewhere he can't ignore. I tapped the screen, pulling up the city grid. The tower. His tower. The one thing he actually gives a shit about besides his own god complex. Orion's eyebrows rose. You want to raid his home? No, I said, smiling wider. I want to tear it down. Silence. Then Ajax exhaled, shaking his head. You're an absolute lunatic. Yep, I said, but you love it. Chapter 19, Reeves Pov. Nix had made his move. Now it was time for mine. The demigods stood around me, tense, waiting. Ares looked like he was still one wrong sentence away from punching me in the face. Ajax was rubbing his temples like I had just personally given him a migraine. Helios and Orion were calculating, silent. I liked that about them. Thinking men. Men who knew when to speak and when to listen. Ares, though, he had zero patience. You're serious? His fists clenched. You want us to walk into his tower? No, I corrected, grinning. I want us to bring it down. Silence. I could see the gears turning behind Orion's eyes. You're assuming Nix won't expect this. I pointed at him. Bingo. Ajax let out a slow breath. We should be rescuing Valkyrie. Wrong. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Nix is expecting that. He's waiting for us to be dumb and emotional. Ares scoffed. Yeah, because we care about our own, we're dumb. I smirked. No, because if we go for her now, we lose. I tapped the holomap of the city, highlighting Nix's tower. You see, our dear self-proclaimed god has a problem. He's never had to fight a war like this. He's been erasing problems before they happen, rewriting reality in his favor. But now? I glanced around. Now, he's actually fighting, and that means we can force his hand. Orion nodded slowly. You're thinking leverage. Exactly. The room shifted. The anger faded slightly, replaced by calculated understanding. I stood, pacing around the table. Valkyrie's capture is bait, but not for us. It's for Nix. He's watching to see how I respond. If we follow the script and chase after her immediately, he wins. He'll take out another one of us, then another, until we're just a handful of survivors grasping at a war we've already lost. I paused. But what if we don't follow the script? What if instead we take something from him? Ares exhaled sharply, rubbing his jaw. His tower. I grinned. The seat of his power. The one thing he values as much as himself. I let the words settle. We hit him where it hurts. We take the one place he feels untouchable. Helios studied me carefully. If this fails, it paints a massive target on our backs. I smirked. We already have a target on our backs. Orion folded his arms. You're gambling. I turned to him. I always gamble. I just happen to win. Ares cracked his knuckles. So, what's the plan? Hours later, the tower raid begins. We moved through the underbelly of the city, cloaked in darkness, slipping through routes even Nix's rewritten world hadn't accounted for. We weren't a strike team. We were a surgical scalpel. Precise. Lethal. One purpose. I led the charge, my mind stretching outward, feeling the subtle pull of reality around me. Nix couldn't erase me. That was his biggest flaw. He could manipulate the world however he wanted, but I was a fixed point. That meant I could see where his world started and where it ended. And right now, I was stepping into his domain. Ares took out the first wave of enforcers, crushing through their defensive lines like a battering ram. Ajax followed, clearing tech barriers, disabling security layers. Helios created the opening in the upper floors. Orion ensured we stayed 3 steps ahead. Every move Nix expected, we subverted. Every trap he laid, we disarmed. Until, finally, we reached the core, the beating heart of his empire. The room was cold, not temperature-wise, but there was a presence here, something watching us, something waiting. A console glowed ahead of us, thrumming with pure rewritten energy. This wasn't just a command center. This was where Nix kept his existence intact. I stepped forward. This is it, I murmured. Ares positioned himself by the entrance, watching the halls. How much time do we have? Orion's voice was calm. Not enough. Helios knelt by the interface, running his hand along the input system. This isn't normal data. This is his will in tangible form. I smiled. Good thing I'm good at breaking things. Ajax frowned. Reeves, whatever you do, do it fast. I raised my hand over the console, feeling it, understanding it. Nyx wasn't just controlling this city. He was woven into it. This tower wasn't just a symbol, it was part of him, a tether, a foundation, a weakness. I exhaled, time to take something back, and I ripped it open. The system screamed, the lights flickered, the air itself groaned as my mind shattered the threads tying this place to his influence. And then, the alarms blared. Ares swore. He knows. Of course he knows, I grinned, feeling the pulse of power beneath my skin. I just took his favorite toy. The tower shook. We had seconds. Ajax grabbed me. Time to go. I took one last look at the console. I had ripped a chunk of Nyx's control away from him. I had done something he couldn't undo. I smirked. Let's move. Chapter 20. Nyx POV. Something inside me broke. I had felt losses before. Pieces of my world flickering. Tiny imperfections trying to push back against inevitability. But this was different. The moment Reeves touched my tower, the moment his filthy, unworthy hands ripped a part of my control away, I felt it, a void in my being. A hollow, unacceptable absence. This wasn't just a challenge. This wasn't just war. This was theft. He had stolen from me. I stood in the ruined heart of my tower, the air still humming from the violation. My power crackled against the walls, barely contained, the edges of reality flickering around me like a shattered mirror struggling to hold itself together. Schofield stood nearby, watching, waiting. He didn't speak. Smart. He knew better than to push me right now. I exhaled slowly, letting the raw fury settle into something sharper, colder. I reached outward, stretching through the city, threading myself back into the world, and I found them, running, like rats in my streets. I smiled. They think they're getting away. Schofield finally spoke, voice careful. They're fast. I turned to him, my grin widening. Not fast enough. And then I moved. The demigods moved like precision weapons, covering ground at unnatural speeds, leaping across rooftops, slipping into routes only they could predict. Reeves was ahead of them all, because of course he was. But I wasn't interested in him. Not yet. I was interested in the slowest, the weakest link, Ares. He was strong, the brute force of their little operation, built like a human war machine. But he wasn't like Reeves. He wasn't outside my reach. And he was about to learn what that meant. I twisted reality itself, warping the streets, folding space to my will, pulling the environment into a trap. Ares turned the corner, and suddenly the alley was gone. The world closed in behind him, cutting him off from the others. The streets stretched, folding like an impossible labyrinth, the sky overhead cracking like glass. He skidded to a stop, chest heaving, eyes narrowing, and then he turned. I stepped forward, the weight of my presence pressing down like a storm. You lost, I said simply. Ares rolled his shoulders. Guess we're doing this, huh? I smiled. Yes, we are, and then he charged. I had fought many things, I had erased many things. But this was physical. Ares came at me like a living wrecking ball, fist swinging, his entire body a weapon of pure destruction. I could see every muscle move, every tendon coil, the way he shifted weight before impact. He was a perfect soldier, but I wasn't something that soldiers were meant to fight. His first punch came fast, a direct hit toward my ribs. I could have phased through it. Could have rewritten the impact so that it never happened, but I didn't. I let it land, bone cracked, pain exploded through my side. I grinned. He pulled back, surprised. I tilted my head. Was that supposed to hurt? He snarled and came at me again. This time, I moved, not by stepping back, not by dodging. I redefined the space around me. He swung, and his fist passed through empty air. I was already behind him. I slammed my elbow into his spine, sending him crashing forward, skidding across the pavement. He coughed, rolled, and pushed himself back up, eyes burning with fury. Good. I wanted him angry. I raised a hand and closed my fingers into a fist. The air around him compressed, reality pressing inward, trying to crush him. But Ares resisted. His body strained against my influence, pushing back in ways no human should be able to. The cybernetics in his system, the synthetic reinforcements Reeves had implanted, they were acting against my will. I clenched my jaw. Ares roared and broke free. Then he leapt at me, full force. We collided like gods clashing in an ancient war. Fists met flesh. Shockwaves tore through the air. The street cracked beneath us, buildings shuddering from the sheer force. He grabbed me by the throat, slamming me into the pavement. I coughed, laughing, my fingers tightening around his wrist. Impressive, I admitted. Then I broke his arm. He snarled in pain, but before he could pull back, I grabbed his other wrist and ripped it out of its socket. He bellowed, trying to pull away, but I wasn't done. I shoved my fingers into his throat, lifting him off the ground. His feet kicked uselessly, his cybernetic limbs trying to recalibrate. His body was still fighting, trying to adapt to the damage, but it wouldn't matter, not anymore. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening. This, I murmured, is the difference between a warrior and a god. Ares let out a final, defiant growl. Then I ripped his head off. The world went silent. Blood pooled around my feet, the scent of iron thick in the air. The fight was over. The first demigod had fallen. I felt it before I saw it, something inside me shifting. something awakening. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through my bones. My breath came slow, steady, but something was different. Then I saw it, a glow wrapping around me, flickering in the edges of my vision. Purple, a pulsing, raw energy I hadn't summoned, hadn't even known I could summon. It wasn't my rewriting. It wasn't just control. It was something deeper, something primal. Chaos. I lifted my hand, watching the energy coil around my fingers, twisting like a living force. I clenched my fist. It obeyed. For now. Schofield's voice crackled in my earpiece. You got him? I exhaled, rolling my shoulders, feeling the new power settling into my body. Yeah, I murmured. I got him. I looked down at Ares' lifeless form, 1 down, 4 to go, and Reeves was next. Chapter 21, Nick's POV. The city trembled beneath my feet. I stood over Ares' lifeless body, his blood staining the pavement, his cybernetic limbs twitching uselessly in the aftermath. His death wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. 1 down, 4 to go, and Reeves was next. The purple aura still flickered around me, a living force I could barely control, coiling around my arms, pulsing like a second heartbeat. It wasn't just power, it was something else, something deeper, something older. Schofield's voice crackled through my earpiece. Nix, I didn't turn. Speak. There was a pause, a hesitation. That was new. Something's happening, he said, his voice careful. Your presence, whatever you just unlocked, it's affecting the city. I felt it. The air was heavy. The neon lights flickered erratically. The skyline itself seemed to bend under my emotions. It wasn't just power, it was chaos. I turned to face the enforcers who had arrived too late to help Ares. Their weapons were still raised, but their hands shook. They had seen me rewrite reality before. They had seen me erase people, reshape history, twist the rules of existence to my will. But this was something else. I took a slow breath. Where are the rest of them? One enforcer swallowed hard. Gone. They escaped. Of course they did. Reeves wouldn't risk another fight so soon. He was watching, waiting. He knew what was coming next. War. I turned away from the corpse at my feet, exhaling slowly. Send a message. Schofield stepped forward. To who? I grinned. To everyone. The broadcast went live within minutes. Across the city. No, across the world. My voice reached every screen, every signal, every transmission. I stood at the top of my tower, Ares' severed head in my hand, his lifeless metal eyes staring into nothingness. I held it up to the cameras. For months I have ruled. My voice was steady, calm, but there was something underneath, a sharpness, a hunger. I have reshaped this world. I have given it order, a purpose, a reason to exist. The city watched in silence, but there are still those who resist. I let the words settle, let the weight of them sink into the hearts of those who still clung to their old illusions. There are still those who believe they can fight me, that they can undo what I have built. I clenched my fist, and Ares' head crushed into scrap, the metal and bone collapsing under my grip. The message was clear. This is your only warning, I said. The era of hesitation is over. The era of mercy is over. I stepped closer to the camera, my gaze burning. This is war, the broadcast cut, and the city shook. The enforcers ran. They turned against me. I could feel them scattering through the streets, slipping into the underground, trying to escape me. But there was no escape. They thought they could defy me. They thought they could walk away. They were wrong. The city itself bent to my will as I hunted them down. My aura pulsed violently, purple energy crackling in the air, twisting through the streets, shifting reality in my wake. I was everywhere. I was the air they breathed, the shadows they hid in, the city itself. One by one, I found them. The first enforcer was caught in an alley. He fired his weapon, but the bullets slowed mid-air, twisting, dissolving into nothing before they could reach me. He didn't have time to scream. I erased him from existence. The second and third tried to escape through the rooftops using old resistance tunnels. I collapsed the ground beneath them, dragging them into my domain. They didn't last long. I tore through them. No more hesitation, no more patience. They had chosen to defy me. They had chosen death. And then, Schofield. He wasn't running. He was waiting. I found him standing in the middle of the street, hands raised, his expression unreadable. The world flickered around me, my chaos energy pulsing violently. I stepped forward, my voice calm, measured. You didn't run. Schofield exhaled, watching me carefully. Didn't see the point. I tilted my head. Brave or stupid? Neither, he said. Just trying to talk to you. A pause. I stared at him, my fingers twitching at my sides, my aura crackling, distorting the air between us. Talk? I repeated. Schofield didn't move. Yeah. You remember talking, don't you? A flicker of something old. But I ignored it. I exhaled slowly. What do you want? Schofield sighed, shaking his head. Not much. Just to stop you from losing yourself completely. Silence stretched between us. The city pulsed. Reality waited, and for the first time in a long time, I listened. Chapter 22. Nick's POV. Schofield stood before me, calm, unwavering. He had nowhere left to run, but he wasn't afraid. He should have been. The city around us warped and twisted, the edges of reality curling under the weight of my power. My chaos energy pulsed violently, flickering in unpredictable waves, reacting to every breath I took. Schofield exhaled. "This isn't you." I didn't respond. Because he was wrong. This was exactly who I was. And yet, I hadn't erased him. I could have. I had wiped out everyone else. The traitors, the ones who dared to turn their backs on me. But I had let him stand here, because some part of me wanted to hear what he had to say. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. I tilted my head. "You think you can stop me?" "No," he admitted. "Not like this." I took a step forward. The air rippled, my aura flaring, distorting space itself. Schofield tensed but held his ground. I clenched my fists. "Then what do you want?" He sighed. "To make you see what you've become." I almost laughed. Almost. Because I already knew. I was beyond humanity, beyond morality, beyond reason. Schofield didn't understand. I had already won. I exhaled, shaking my head. "There's nothing left to see." His gaze hardened. "Then why are you hesitating?" I froze. The chaos energy around me pulsed erratically, responding to the sudden uncertainty. He had always been sharp, always known how to get inside my head. I snarled, stepping forward again, my vision darkening at the edges. "I'm not hesitating." Schofield didn't step back. That was his mistake. "You are," he said. "You think this makes you powerful. Look at yourself, Nix. You're not ruling anymore. You're just destroying." Something inside me snapped. The air collapsed inward like a black hole had just opened. My chaos energy flared violently, the glow turning jagged, unstable. And then, I lost control. The power surged forward before I could stop it. Schofield's eyes widened, and he barely had time to react, before I ripped him in half. It wasn't clean. It wasn't fast. His body split apart in a sudden violent pull, as if reality itself had decided to unmake him. Blood sprayed across the pavement, thick and unnatural, because my power hadn't just killed him. It had torn him out of existence halfway. One half of his body collapsed lifelessly onto the ground, the other disintegrated. Like the universe itself had forgotten he was ever whole. The silence was deafening. My breath came ragged, uneven, as the chaos energy crackled violently around me. My vision swam, my mind reeling from the aftershock of what I had just done. I took a step back, then another. I looked down at my hands, my fingers still shaking, the power still coiling around my skin. No, this wasn't what I wanted. I hadn't meant to. I fell to my knees. The world blurred, my vision darkening, my breath shuddering as my mind tried to process the irreversible. I had killed him. Schofield, my oldest friend, one of the last people who still believed I could be saved, gone, by my own hands. The chaos energy flickered. The pulsing glow that had burned so brightly before now felt cold. Empty. I let out a breath, then another. Then the tears came, a choked, ragged sob spilling out before I could stop it. I gritted my teeth, my entire body trembling. My vision blurred, the edges of reality warping, distorting, breaking as my mind spiraled. I had lost control, and I had killed him. I clenched my fists, my breath shuddering. This wasn't power. This was madness. I had become the very thing Reeves wanted me to be. A monster. The city was silent, and for the first time since I had claimed the throne, I felt alone. Chapter 23. Reeves Parvi. I hadn't expected this. Not Schofield, not him. For all the chaos, for all the war, for all the carefully designed countermeasures and strategic responses, I thought he would always be there. Not fighting, not taking a side, but watching. A constant in a world neither of us fully recognized anymore. But Nix had ripped him in half. Literally, I stared at the screen, the footage playing again, watching as Nix's chaos energy twisted, as his body reacted before his mind could process it. The moment of hesitation, the second of regret, the way his expression shattered when he realized what he had done. I should have been happy. This was the break I needed. Nix was unstable, vulnerable, breaking. But I wasn't happy. I was angry. Schofield and I were on opposite sides of this war, but we had bled together, served together, fought for the same reasons, even if those reasons had twisted over time. I leaned against the console, exhaling through my nose, jaw clenched. The room was silent. No jokes, no witty comments, no easy words. The demigods stood around me, waiting, watching. They knew I wasn't Reeves right now. I was something else. I tapped the screen, shifting through schematics, my mind already calculating, planning, adjusting. We're not waiting anymore. The words came sharp, cold. Ares was gone, Schofield was gone, and Nix was spiraling. He had always been powerful, untouchable, a force beyond comprehension. But now he was dangerous, unpredictable. That meant I needed something stronger. I flicked through the data, expanding the designs I had been working on in secret, my final creation. My last card to play. I stared at the schematics, fingers curling into fists. "This is it," I murmured. Ajax exhaled. "You're sure about this?" I looked at him. My voice was calm. I was sure the second Nix killed Schofield, The room shifted. This wasn't a counterattack. This wasn't strategy. This was justice. I turned back to the designs, my mind already adjusting the specifications. The demigods were strong, unstoppable in their own ways. But this was something different. This was Nemesis. I stood in the core of my lab, the energy hum of the systems vibrating through the steel beneath my feet. The chamber was dark, pulsing with quiet power, the only light coming from the reinforced containment pod in the center. Inside, the future was taking shape. The others watched from the perimeter, tense, waiting. They felt it. Nemesis wasn't a warrior, not a soldier, not a demigod. He was the end of this war. I stepped forward, placing my palm against the control panel, my mind stretching through the data, through the power sources, through the synthetic biology interwoven into the perfect organism. His body was stronger, not just enhanced, engineered. 10 times the durability, 10 times the reaction speed. Where the demigods had limits, Nemesis did not. His skin was unbreakable, reinforced with nanostructures that could absorb kinetic impact and disperse force. His mind was crafted for one singular purpose: to hunt Nyx, to adapt to him, to kill him. I activated the final phase. Energy pulsed through the chamber, the containment pod humming as it unlocked, steam rising as the security seals disengaged. The room shook. Nemesis opened his eyes, not blue, not green, not human. Deep crimson, like he was already seeing blood. The others tensed. Ares had been the strongest of them. And yet, in that moment, standing before the final creation, I could feel the difference. Ares had been a fighter. Nemesis was a weapon. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, testing his movements, feeling the raw power coursing through him. The lab lights flickered as the systems tried to calculate his presence. I exhaled, watching carefully. "You awake in there?" His gaze shifted to me, assessing, scanning. Then, designation confirmed. His voice was deep, controlled, but not mechanical, not entirely. He was alive. He flexed his fingers, his entire body pulsing with energy. His first thoughts weren't confusion, weren't questions, they were processing instructions. He was already preparing for battle. I smiled. Good. He lifted his gaze fully, meeting my eyes. "Objective?" The others were silent. I took a slow breath, letting the weight of this moment settle into my bones. I had designed him for this. I had built him to end this war. "Find Nyx," I said, my voice firm, final. "And kill him." Nemesis nodded. Understood. The war had changed. Nyx had taken Schofield from me. Now I was taking everything from him. Chapter 24. Reeves Prov. Nyx had always been inevitable, a force beyond reason, beyond understanding, a god in his own mind, rewriting the world to fit his vision. But gods could fall. And now, for the first time, he was about to face something he couldn't erase. Nemesis had left the lab only hours ago. I didn't need to track him. His purpose was singular. His mind was sharper than any living thing before him, his movements crafted from a perfect design. He wasn't wandering, he wasn't searching, he was hunting. I stood in the control center, watching the city grid flicker. Every piece of surveillance I had was already failing to keep up with him. He moved through the streets like a shadow in motion, silent, unreadable. The demigods watched from the perimeter, tension settling into the room like static. Orion folded his arms. "You're sure he's ready?" I smirked, glancing at the last footage I had of Nemesis before the feeds failed to register him. He was ready before he was even built. Ajax exhaled, rubbing his temples. "I just don't get it. How do you prepare something to kill that?" He gestured to the screen, where a still image of Nyx's chaos energy flaring was frozen in place. I turned to face them, my expression calm. Because Nyx thinks he's above consequences. That's his weakness. He's never had to evolve. He's never been pushed. He's never had to face something he can't control. Orion narrowed his eyes. "And you think Nemesis is that something?" I smiled, slow and sharp. "I know he is. Nyx's POV. I felt him before I saw him, a ripple through the city. Not a shift, not a distortion. Something absolute. A force that wasn't bending to my will. I stood atop my tower, overlooking the streets, my chaos energy writhing in the air around me, pulsing against the skyline. I wasn't just watching the city, I was woven into it. And yet, something was moving outside my control. A presence. It wasn't Reeves. It wasn't the demigods. It was something new, something wrong. I exhaled slowly. "Come to me, then." And he did. I turned as the pressure in the air shifted. The rooftop was vast, but suddenly, it felt smaller. Nemesis stepped into view. No words, no hesitation, no wasted movement. He wasn't looking at the city, he was looking at me, and for the first time, I saw him fully. He was tall, towering over any normal man, his body forged with enhancements that weren't just physical. He was perfectly crafted. No unnecessary bulk, no wasted space. A living weapon in human form, and his eyes, not human, deep crimson, unyielding. His presence was absolute. I raised my hand, my aura crackling, my energy pulsing through the air. Reality bent around me, the city below trembling as my will stretched forward. And then Nemesis moved. I had seen fast before. I had seen speed beyond reason. But this was something else. 1 second, he was standing across from me. The next, He was already in front of me, fist swinging. I barely dodged, shifting reality around me to twist out of the way. But he adjusted, immediately. No delay, no hesitation. His second strike hit my ribs. The impact shattered the rooftop. I skidded back, coughing, something sharp splitting through my breath. That actually hurt. Nemesis didn't stop. He was already on me again, relentless, his movements adjusting in real time, faster than any enemy I had ever faced. I rewrote the space between us, collapsing it, trying to trap him inside a loop of my own design. It didn't work. He tore through it. His body moved through my rewritten space like it wasn't even real. Because to him, it wasn't. I gritted my teeth, raising both hands, my chaos energy flaring to life, surging outward, warping the very air around us. The rooftop collapsed. The sky split open, my power unleashed. Nemesis walked through it. I narrowed my eyes. "You're different." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His next hit caught my jaw. I staggered, the world spinning, my own energy rebounding off my body in a way I had never felt before. That was the problem. I couldn't erase him. I couldn't rewrite him. He was outside my reach. I snarled, pushing off the ground, my aura exploding outward. Fine. If reality wouldn't obey, I would tear him apart with my own hands. I moved forward, faster than light, slamming my fist into his chest. He didn't dodge. He didn't need to. The force of my hit should have sent him through the atmosphere. It didn't. He caught my wrist, and then he squeezed. For the first time I felt my bones strain. The pressure was unbearable. I let out a low breath, staring into his red, unblinking eyes. Impressive, I admitted. But let's see what happens when I stop playing. I let the chaos energy consume me. The glow around me deepened, the purple aura shifting, twisting, my control over it still fragile but there. My next hit tore through the sound barrier. Nemesis finally staggered. A flicker of something, a minor step back. I grinned. There it was. He wasn't perfect. I stepped forward. Not so invincible after all. Nemesis's expression didn't change. He adjusted. And then he hit me back. This time, I felt it. I crashed into the side of my own tower, cracking through reinforced steel. My vision blurred, my mind snapping between rage and realization. Nemesis wasn't stopping. He was already moving in for the kill. I exhaled sharply, wiping the blood from my lip. Finally, a fight worth my time. Chapter 25. Nick's POV. Nemesis was relentless. I had fought wars. I had erased enemies before they could exist, rewritten history to suit my vision. Nothing could stand against me. Until now. He wasn't just adapting, he was learning. Every move I made, every attempt to bend reality he countered. Not with raw power, not with overwhelming force, with precision. The way he fought, it wasn't reckless, it wasn't instinctual, it was calculated, designed. And that was when I understood. Reeves didn't just make a weapon, he made a solution to me. Nemesis wasn't meant to win with brute force. He was meant to remove me as a variable, and for the first time, I felt it. Doubt. I snarled, shaking off the sensation, stepping forward before I could think. My aura flared violently, chaos energy exploding outward, tearing through the rooftop in waves of raw destruction. Nemesis moved through it like it wasn't there. I threw a punch, the force warping space itself. He ducked. My fist shattered the air behind him, the energy dispersing harmlessly into the void. His counter came instantly. A sharp knee to my ribs, then a follow-up blow to my jaw. My head snapped sideways, vision flaring white for half a second. Then his hands were around my throat, fast, efficient, like a machine executing an already determined outcome. I broke free, twisting in the air, kicking him back with a pulse of reality-warped force. He staggered, only slightly. That wasn't enough. He adjusted. He kept moving. I exhaled sharply, feeling my breath shake. This was the first time in my entire existence that I was losing a fight. Nemesis stepped forward, his movements perfected. No wasted energy, no miscalculations. He was already predicting what I would do before I did it. I felt something unfamiliar. Fatigue. Not in my body, not in my strength, in my mind. Nemesis was making me think too much. He was forcing me to react instead of control. I roared, forcing all my chaos energy outward, twisting the world around us into pure destruction. The sky split open, the city below warping under the sheer pressure. He didn't move, he just waited. For me to make a mistake. And then, I did. I stepped forward, too predictable. Nemesis moved before I even realized my miscalculation. His hand slammed into my chest. Not a punch, not a strike, a calculated disassembly of my form. The moment he touched me, I felt it. A counterforce, not raw strength, not reality-warping power, but pure rejection. My body snapped backward, my entire existence recoiling from his touch as if the world itself was rejecting me. I crashed into the tower's steel, gasping, feeling something unfamiliar, weakness. I barely had time to recover. He was already coming again. He was going to end this. Then, a gunshot. Not aimed at Nemesis, a warning shot. The air shifted. I lifted my gaze, and Reeves stepped onto the rooftop. Behind him, the remaining 4 demigods followed. Orion, Ajax, Helios, Valkyrie. Valkyrie was still scarred from our last fight, but she stood firm, her body tense, ready. I exhaled slowly, straightening despite the pain in my chest. Reeves grinned. "Man," he said, shaking his head, "you really don't like losing, huh?" Nemesis stopped, waiting for orders. I clenched my jaw, feeling the chaos energy flare wildly around me. My control was slipping. I needed to focus. "Reeves," my voice came sharp, controlled. "You're late," he smirked. "Had to make an entrance. Wouldn't be me otherwise." He tilted his head, his grin fading slightly. Then his gaze shifted to Nemesis. "How's my boy doing?" I snarled, stepping forward. "You made this?" Reeves raised an eyebrow. "You sound mad. That means he's working perfectly." The demigods took formation, spreading out, their movements sharp, synchronized. Reeves wasn't even holding a weapon. He didn't need to. This was his battlefield now. I exhaled, shaking off the ache in my body, the exhaustion I shouldn't have felt. "All of this," I murmured, gesturing around us just to stop me. Reeves smiled, but it wasn't playful anymore. It wasn't sarcastic. It was cold. "Not to stop you." He tapped his temple. "To kill you." The sky rumbled. The final battle had begun. Chapter 26. Reeves' POV. I had seen Nyx fight before. I had seen him erase people, rewrite entire moments in time, twist reality into whatever shape suited him. I had studied every movement, every decision, every breath he had taken since the day he decided he was a god. But right now, he was losing. Badly. I ducked under a pulse of wild chaos energy, rolling across the rooftop as the air around us distorted and fractured under the sheer weight of his failing control. The sky overhead shuddered, glitching between different versions of itself, unable to decide which reality Nyx wanted it to be. Good. That meant he was panicking. "Keep the pressure on," I shouted, twisting my body mid-air and hurling a kinetic blast directly at his ribs. The force sent him skidding across the ruined rooftop, his boots grinding against steel. Orion was already on him. He moved like a ghost, weaving through the battlefield like he belonged there more than Nyx ever did. A blade sliced through the air, inches from Nyx's throat. But Nyx twisted space, bending the distance between them, warping the attack before it could land. That should have worked. It always had before. But Orion adjusted instantly, his mind reading the shift in real time, compensating before Nyx could even finish his thought. The blade redirected itself, catching Nyx's shoulder, cutting deep. His first real wound. I grinned. "Not so untouchable anymore, huh?" Nyx snarled, his aura flaring violently, the purple glow of his chaos energy lashing outward like a living storm. Valkyrie was already moving before it reached her. She jumped above the blast, flipping mid-air, hurling a concussive charge downward. The detonation hit Nyx in the chest, sending him crashing through the rooftop and down into the tower below. We followed. Helios hit the ground first, his reinforced frame absorbing the impact, his arms raised, already firing. The air lit up with energy rounds, each one designed to disrupt Nyx's quantum signature. Nyx phased between the shots, but his movements were slowing. I could see it in his stance, the way his aura flickered unpredictably, like a machine running too hot. He wasn't thinking, he was reacting. Ares would have loved this. I clenched my jaw, eyes narrowing. "Don't let up!" Ajax darted in, his enhanced speed allowing him to slip through Nyx's defenses, landing a brutal elbow to the ribs before disappearing again. Nyx swung a punch too late, striking only empty air as Ajax reappeared on his other side, striking again. 2 direct hits, no retaliation. Nyx staggered, chaos energy fluctuating wildly, his breath ragged. And then, Nemesis stepped forward. Nyx barely had time to turn before Nemesis grabbed him by the throat. For the first time in this entire war, Nyx looked small. Nemesis' power unleashes. The ground beneath us cracked as Nemesis lifted Nyx effortlessly, fingers tightening. Nyx thrashed, grabbing at Nemesis' arm, trying to phase, trying to rewrite, trying to do anything. But Nemesis was immune. Nyx's fingers scraped uselessly against his forearm, his eyes widening slightly. That was the moment. That was the realization. Nemesis wasn't like the others. He wasn't adapting to Nyx. He had already been designed to counter him completely. "You feel that?" I called, stepping forward, watching as Nyx struggled in Nemesis's grip. "That's what real inevitability feels like." Nemesis didn't hesitate. He slammed Nyx into the steel flooring, the force shaking the entire building. Then he did it again. And again. Each hit sent shockwaves through the structure, cracks splintering through the metal. Nyx coughed blood. His body wasn't responding fast enough. For the first time. His power wasn't enough. Nemesis finally let him go, letting him slump onto his knees. Nyx gasped for breath, his aura dimmed, his body shaking. I stepped toward him, crouching down, voice quiet. "You're losing." His eyes snapped up to mine, furious, desperate, afraid. That was the moment I knew. For the first time since he took this throne, Nyx had finally felt fear. And the best part? Nyx looked defeated. Chapter 27, Reeves' POV. Nyx was finished. I could see it in the way he moved, or failed to move. The way his body twitched uncontrollably, chaos energy flickering weakly around him. its once powerful glow now erratic, unstable. He had fought like an animal backed into a corner, lashing out, desperate, dying. And now? Now he was just waiting for it to be over. I exhaled, blood running down the side of my face, my body aching from the raw force of the battle. The city around us was unrecognizable, a graveyard of collapsed steel and shattered glass. This wasn't a battlefield anymore, it was a tomb. Nemesis stood motionless nearby, his gaze locked onto Nyx, waiting for the order. He would obey, he would do whatever I commanded without hesitation. But this I had to do myself. I lifted my hand. Nyx barely reacted. He was on his knees, breathing raggedly, his once monstrous presence now small. He wasn't a god anymore. He was just a man who had reached the end. I could feel my telekinesis pulsing, energy crackling at my fingertips. I had enough power left for one last hit. One final execution. For a split second, I wondered if this was how it was always meant to end. Me standing over him, Nyx helpless, the world finally free. I clenched my jaw. You brought this on yourself. Nyx lifted his head slightly, his eyes hazy, distant. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me, like he was already gone. I exhaled sharply, and then I let it go. The final pulse of telekinetic force exploded outward, crashing into him like a collapsing star. The force was overwhelming, tearing through what was left of the city ruins. Nyx's body folded under the impact, and then everything came down. Nyx's POV. I felt nothing, no pain, no sound, just emptiness. I was on my back, staring up. The sky was still there, but barely visible through the thick clouds of smoke and ruin. The battle was over, and I had lost. Everything around me was destroyed. The city that had once bent to my will, reshaped by my every thought, was now a graveyard. A once proud skyscraper loomed above me, its broken form teetering, barely held together after the carnage it had suffered. The same skyscraper I had been thrown through moments ago. I could see the cracks running along its base, could hear the slow groan of metal giving in. It was coming down, and I was too weak to stop it. I blinked, my vision blurring, breath shallow. My aura flickered weakly around me, the chaos energy barely holding on to me. This was it, the final moment. The skyscraper gave in. Steel and concrete snapped, crumbling, and then it collapsed. The sky vanished. All I saw was falling debris. Darkness swallowed me whole. I was dead. I had to be. No one could survive this. No one could survive me losing. I waited for the end, but it never came. I felt a pull. Not gravity. Not the weight of the rubble burying me. Something else. Something deep. Like the very fabric of existence was peeling me away from reality. The pain disappeared. The sound drifted into silence. And then, the world changed. I wasn't under the rubble anymore. I wasn't in the city. I wasn't anywhere. I was floating. Endless. Weightless. Thoughtless. A place that wasn't a place. An abyss without shape. And then, a voice. Not Reeves. Not the demigods. Not anyone I had ever known before. A whisper curling through the emptiness, wrapping around my mind. You are not done yet. I tried to speak. I couldn't. The void shifted. Something was watching me. Something that had been waiting for me. And then, the darkness swallowed me completely.